When we talk school refusal, we think about the risk factors that put a child at risk for having school refusal behaviors. Again, this is very different for every child, but we have three main categories here. The biggest one and the most common one we see is academic risk. So a child who has a lot of difficult classes or struggling in school, and that can come from ADHD and learning disability or just ADHD. It can come from other anxieties or other disabilities that they're struggling with. We know that children with ADHD have very poor executive functioning. Again, this is not every child, but a child who has poor executive functioning, which means organizing of their work, planning their homework, putting their things in their backpack, deciding what to do first. All of those fall under the category of what's called executive functioning. And if those skills are poor, they're at risk for eventually having trouble going to school. We also know the homework load and pressure can be a lot for children, whether it come from teachers or home. Not every home has pressure, but it's a good thing to pay attention to if it's there because it can put a child at risk. And a child who's out of school a lot, whether it be asthma or something else, that prolonged absence can put them at risk for eventually not wanting to go to school. We also see a lot of children with social struggles, whether they have ADHD and social anxiety, or they just have trouble with conflicts with friends. It can be very, very challenging for a child to want to go to school if these conflicts are happening on the daily, right? And if their social anxiety is not being treated, they're going to feel more and more self-conscious and more alienated in front of their friends. If they're feeling bullied and it's not being addressed, that can make it really hard to want to go to school. And that over time can be a risk factor. There's also personal struggles. So if there's family conflict, if there's trauma experienced either by the child or by the family as a whole, if there's a death or a loss in the family, those are all putting the child potentially at risk. But it's worth and important to note that that doesn't mean every child, right? Not every child who has a death in their family will be at risk, but it's important to think about how they're functioning with their ADHD in school with all other supports around them. There are 4 functional conditions of school refusal. Whenever we talk about behaviors, we talk about what's the function, right? Function means what's driving the behavior, what's happening for them to act in this way. So when we talk about school refusal, we're wondering what's causing it, which is often the number one question with school refusal. It's important to know, right, that this is very general, but it can be very specific for your child or a child in your classroom if you're a teacher. But children often refuse school for more than one of the following. The first is avoidance of school-based stimuli that can provoke a negative response or distress. We'll go into each of these in a moment. The second one is avoidance of social or evaluative situations at school that make them anxious. The third is gaining parent or caregiver attention. And the fourth is gaining access to tangible rewards at home.